Is corruption the single greatest threat to sustainable economic development?
Well, Esperanza, that's what we're here to debate. Thank you for tuning in to watch the Great Debaters Contest Season 9. This is Eastern Region, Machakos County. I am your host, Chris Boro.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. And in today's debate, in the proposition, we have St. Anne's Muthale Girls. In the opposition is Tala High School.
Proposal number 1, you have 3 minutes to make your submissions.
Maskini atazidi kuwa maskini na tajiri atajirike zaidi na wapigia makofi 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 ni matapili kisha jua hawatujali. Corruption is the single greatest threat to our sustainable economical growth. What is corruption? According to the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, 9th edition, corruption is illegal behavior, especially by people in authority. What is greatest? Greatest is a degree. There's great, greater, and greatest, meaning greatest is the extreme degree of being great. What is a threat? A threat is an intention to inflict damage or hostile action. What is sustainable economical growth? In 1987, the Broadland Community of the UN defined sustainable development as what meets the needs of the present without compromising the future generation to meet their own needs. Our own government officials, whom we've entrusted to give us justice, are in the front line. Let us take an example of Lady Justice Philomena Mwilu. She's having a case of not paying tax. Who is the common mwananchi not to be corrupt? If our own people, our own judges, whom we entrust them to give us just, are being found with cases such as not paying tax. Let us go to the insufficient allocation of resources. Let us take the case of the governor of Kirinyaga, Honorable Waiguru. She had a case when she was the head of the NYS, she had a case of funds. Where did the funds go? How was she proven innocent? How did she become the governor of Kirinyaga, the governor of Kirinyaga, and yet she had the case of the NYS? And through this, we get the motion of devolved government brought more harm than good. Do we see in the county government if the governors are really growing their counties with the funds they're given? No, we're only seeing them benefiting themselves. So, my father once told me, everyone goes to school to acquire knowledge, but there is a difference between the educated and the learned. The educated have the papers to prove, but the learned have the papers and the actions. So we are here to take the action by proposing this motion. I've done my part. Ladies and gentlemen, the ball is on your side. As the saying goes, if you cannot convince them, confuse them. And that is what my fellow friends here from Tala High are going to try to do, to confuse you. So I urge you to join me and stay strong to propose that corruption is the single greatest threat to sustainable economical development. Emma Chalo, Muthale Girls.
First proposal, you have 3 minutes to make your submissions.
My name is John Kamodo from the Tala School, and I'm here to strongly oppose the motion that says corruption is the single greatest threat to sustainable economic development. As you all know, that your flow is someone's ceiling. First of all, what is corruption? It is the dishonesty or illegal behavior, especially from people in authority. The people who are in authority in our country are those we elect, and we call them as our politicians. Actually, corruption is not the only thing that has affected our economic development. Firstly, tourism. Tourism has affected our economic development, whereby investors tend to avoid investing in our country for their safety. And also, our people are dying because of terrorism, lacking the labor which can be used in the economic development. For example, the Westgate that happened in the year 2013 in July, whereby many of our people died in that area. We had the people who are skilled and also the unskilled people, but still they are our laborers who provide labor and they are taxable, paying our tax to economic development. Actually, we also have the Cuban doctors who recently were abducted. And actually, there are people who used to treat our people in this country whereby diseases could not be treated by people who are in this country, but the doctors who are here. And they helped very many of them, actually, to help them affect our economic development. Lastly, about also the tourism. Tourism is our backbone in economic development. But if we have tourism, actually, people will not come to invest in our country, or tourists will not be able to come in our country. A case was recently started at Mombasa, whereby the government was complaining that the tourism in Mombasa has yet gone down because people are not going to tour that place. Hence, it is affecting our economic development going down. Secondly, misplaced priorities. Actually, we have the SGR that is functional. But what's the problem with the SGR? Majority of the people in place there, they are from outside country, actually the Chinas. And yet we have Kenyans here who are supposed to work with that, but they're not working there. The amount of money that is being produced with that by that SGR, actually majority is going back to China land. Yes, that's the truth of the matter. And now we have the roads that are being constructed. And these roads being constructed, our people who have built their big buildings, Taj malls to be used by people in order to work for themselves, or in order to cater for their lives. But now the government is trying to destroy them down, bringing them down because they want to build roads or they want to build their own things in that place, whereby it is lowering our economic development, not only corruption, but also misplaced priorities. Lastly, I'm going to speak about the poor education structure and health facilities. Quack doctors. Recently, there was a doctor who went ahead and treated a baby, only a 2-year-something baby, giving him or her 20 grams of morphine injected to a child, only because with a 20 mere ban instead of 2 grams. That was my time.
Second proposal, we have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Well. Did we all come this way to call a spade a big spoon? Did we all come this way to sugarcoat words and blame them all on corruption? The good lad has talked about the unskilled labor. He has talked about tourism, which is in the Mombasa, being not in the right order. But to know that each and every moment the government is allocating payments to educate those who are supposed to carry out the tourism. But where does the money go? Are we building castles on air again? It's my ardent desire to smile, but I can't laugh. Because each and every morning, we see newspapers, corruption. Each and every night, we are seeing headlines, corruption is on the probe. But what are we doing? We're just taking the chance and blaming it on corruption. And every time that you're bringing about channels and taking them to tourism, taking them to agriculture, we have the funds which bring about this. But what are we doing? We're trying to protect those who carry out corruption, forgetting that this year, in the 12th May 2019, Ken Gishiga, who is actually the CEO of economy, said that this year actually will be paying more than 1 trillion to cater for our debts. Read my lips, more than 1 trillion. Why? Because the money that we get from foreign land, for example in China, what is it used to do? They just take the money and stash it in their bank accounts. They just take the money and stash them in what they want to do in their problematic ways. But what do? We just sit back and say, it's corruption. Yes, it's corruption. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to confuse you. When the Constitution was promulgated in 2010, we introduced the devolved government. We wanted them to bring the services closer to the people. But each and every channel that the money takes, it's stolen. Today, tomorrow, we're counting. But where is the action? What are we doing? Each and every time there are demonstrations on the road about money not being enough. And what are we doing to our fellow countrymen? We're increasing the taxes. We're increasing the tax payment for us to be able to pay the debt, instead of bringing this debt to bring about development and finally develop our economy. We have agriculture as the major GDP, which needs fertilizers, which needs seeds. But what do? We go for the local ones, where else we have these large amounts of money to go for the best. Cheap is expensive, you know. Cheap is expensive. But what are we going to do, you and I? We're serving the omelette, because you want to take an egg, you either take the boiled one, take it raw, take it the omelette way. Do you want to take the raw egg? No, it's yucky. So I strongly propose to the motion. Vanessa Ndonge, St. Anne's Muthale Girls. Thank you.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Yes, with or without my glasses, I still can't see the point in what you just said. You are saying the money that is borrowed from China, you can't see what is happening. Haven't you seen the SGR, the roads that have been constructed? The first proposer just said, we have found those people who are being corrupt. That means corruption can be stopped. If you can find them, we can stop corruption. I'm greatly perturbed when you say that corruption is the single greatest threat to economic development. When we have things like Ebola, an epidemic like Ebola in West Africa, it lowered the economy of West Africa. The population went down. Collection of tax cannot be done only for a few people. Government will have low tax collection. Another thing is high number of cartels. Just the other year, 2018, Sonko was complaining about those cartels. High number. A cartel is whereby similar firms come together and decide they're going to sell a product at the same price, no increasing. That means there'll be no competition and no economic development. Natural calamities. We see in Bermuda before was thriving, before an Hurricane Irma came and flooded them all over. It was called a place of blue waters. Another point is civil wars. Like for example, in Somalia, the economy was thriving very well. 53 years back. The military of Somalia was ranked the best in Africa. And also they were producing one of the best oranges. I loved them. But when civil wars got into the Somalia government, was broke, development, infrastructure collapsed, everything collapsed. Even the government itself could not protect itself. Some of them had to run to other countries. They sent even troops, still could not be worked. The military went down the drain. Another is political instability. We see in southern Sudan, Salva Kiir and Riek Machar were not in terms with each other and made southern Sudan a no-go zone for investors, tourists, which made their economic development to go very low, very low. And they could not do anything about it. All they could do is just complain. Political instability against that. Brain drain in our country is also killing us. For example, we can take like Nugu Nanak in Kenya. When he was studying a neurosurgeon, but in Kenya there were no such facilities to support what he was doing. And so he had to go to India to go and do the studies there. And he invested in those countries, invested in that country, leaving Kenya's economy to go down and down and down. We can see such things. So from my fellow proposers, I would like you to take in of this and join to our side to oppose this motion. Thank you.
The proposers have been asked, in areas of the country where insecurity is a bigger problem to the citizens, how exactly does corruption come in? The opposers have been asked to validate the statement that most of the proceeds that come from the standard gauge railway go to China and not Kenya itself. Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Salamu toka Jaramogi na Odinga wanauliza kama Kenya tuko sawa, nikawasho Kenya kuna disaster na generation zetu zinazidi kuzikana. Pesa mlizokopa China bado tunalipa na tumekopa zingine huko China tukajenga barabara na pia reli. I go by the name Michelle Mochuku, representing the St. Anne's Muthale Girls.
There is no way a Tala boy is asking me how corruption is the single main cause of economical decline. Using insecurity and terrorism, how did these terrorists get in Kenya? It's through corruption. How did they cross the borders? It's through corruption. How did they get their way into a country? Come on, think, it must be an inside plan. Who knows Kenya better than us? You know, the wearer of the shoe is the only one who knows where it pinches. And so it's us who understand where the insecurity can occur. For instance, let's take the Eurobond case. 215 shillings, I repeat, read my lips, 215 billion shillings was unaccounted for. 2 years later, after the government says that the money was allocated to the ministries, yet the ministries have no documentation of the allocation of the expenditure of the receipts. And it narrows down to the Ministry of Water and Irrigation according to the Standard Media, which was said to have received 11.2 billion. 11.2 billion. But the officials failed to show any documentation of the receipts of expenditure. And according to Edward Ouko, he says that the investigation is usual. The investigation is going on, and we are going to be given the results later on. But do we ever get the results? No, because it's through this corruption that it's because corruption is the greatest threat to our sustainable economical development, such that the SGR, which my friend just asked about, yes, the money was given. It was supposed to be used, but was it used, all of it? The SGR is under probe. And then we can control drought and global warming if we work together. You know, for now, the countries are waiting for the conclusions of the investigations of where the money went to. Yet the taxpayers are all required to pay 17.8 billion in interest of the payment of the Eurobond. And what projects was the money used for? We don't know. But we as Kenyans, we are expected to pay this money. Okay, there is a mother with an adopted child and a biological child. The adopted child falls ill as a result of being affected by the biological child. But the mother, due to sympathy, chooses to treat the biological child and chooses to treat the adopted child and leaves the biological child. The adopted child is corruption. Yet the biological child is succumbing, and that's us due to corruption. And if they can't convince you, that's why they are convincing you and confusing you that corruption is not the greatest threat to economical development. That was my time.
Title poser, you have 3 minutes to respond to your question.
Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, because none but ourselves could free our minds. Yes, those are the words of the one and only famous reggae artist Bob Marley, when he told the world of how to emancipate themselves from mental slavery, because none but ourselves could free our minds. When I hear of us talking about corruption being the single greatest threat towards economic development, I hear of us being in a situation of mental enslavement, because I am now forced to answer a very limping question asked there on how to prove that the SGR is being financed is being benefited by the Chinese. Because I must tell you that most senior jobs such as the captains and the managers are Chinese, because the Kenyan citizens are given jobs such as the security guards, low-paying jobs. Where does the tax go? The high-tax jobs goes to the Chinese. Let us therefore emancipate ourselves from this kind of mental slavery. I'll therefore continue on just to recap on the points made by my fellow colleagues, such as terrorism. I'm still set to understand how we can fight corruption if we can't care about our security. I'm still set to understand how we can fight corruption when people are dying and the laborers who are supposed to provide the effective labor for that economy to prosper. I'm still set to understand how we'll fight corruption if we are still being fought by things such as natural calamities. I look at a nation such as Bermuda. Bermuda was flourishing high and striving high above the world. But look what happened. Look what happened. Excuse me, somebody. We've got to be serious. We cannot only talk about corruption, but there are more serious things. I therefore look forward and ask the fellow opposers the fellow proposer to come over and step over, because I'm still set to understand such things such as civil wars. If I try to look at a country such as Somalia, because during the 70s, we had nations such as South Korea visit East African countries to learn and study the economies of African countries, mostly Somalia and Kenya, because Somalia was thriving high. But look what the civil wars has done to a nation like Somalia. And then we can still stand up and say that we know corruption is the single greatest threat towards economic development. Are we truly ourselves? Are we? With that, I choose to finalize and say, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, because none but ourselves will free our minds. I close my case.
Proposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
There is absolutely enough for everyone in the world. But there'll never be enough for one corrupt man. We have nature and we have nurture. Nature is our biological setting. Nurture is what we cultivate within ourselves, what we make ourselves believe, and forget about reality and appearance. It appears to us that we have decided to put corruption at the backstage and start a blame game of not trying to understand and look into a deeper meaning of what Kenya is going through. I still strongly propose to the motion. I rest my case as I arrest yours.
Proposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
Lost of words, lost of words, lost of words. But all what I can say, let us stop prioritizing things while yet we've got more chronic issues facing us. Because if we were first able to fight such kind of the things that I've mentioned, terrorism, then we could have been able to fight with corruption because our people would have been striving. But when I hear you people talk of corruption being the single greatest economy, I am set to reflect back on the Westgate attack when I was there. I was there in the 1813, and I had to move with some UN officers evacuating people. And when I think of that horrific attack, my heart is perturbed as to why we can continue saying that corruption is the single greatest economic threat. People and brothers, sisters, fellow countrymen, let us unite and lead the country to fight more chronic issues and more serious issues, because it's not only corruption that faces us. You can come over and join us so that we can ensure we can make a better change in our nation. With that, I wish the blessings of the good Lord be upon you all.
St. Anne's, Emma, I think I want to just say that the first thing that was impressive is how you started. That was a very good start for your team. Nonetheless, when you're mentioning you mentioned personalities like the governor, the DCJ and all that, don't dwell on personalities. I think what is important is what we are losing that would have been invested in the economy, okay? As the first speaker, you want to dwell on that because we're talking about corruption being the single greatest thing. It's not about the people. The act is that it's a corrupt act, and that money would have been taken elsewhere, all right? So avoid the personalities, just go straight to the point. Vanessa, very good speaker, that's the first thing, yes. A little generalization. When you start saying that, they're stashing money somewhere, you want to come with facts and evidence, okay? Michelle, good answer, and I think that is alluded to the fact that you tackle the team with the answer. However, you want to validate as well your submissions. When it comes to the 215 billion that you're talking about, you want to say from which source, okay? So that nobody will say that you're creating your figures. Now, I want to comment the style. Actually, on both teams, we've had a lot of musical elements coming in and all that. So in terms of style, all of you guys scored very high.
Tala boys, corruption is the single greatest threat to sustainable economic development. I like your argument, and actually the question that we are battling with is being opposers. If it is not, then what is? And you came in sharply and told us things about terrorism, misplaced priorities, poor education, health, political instabilities, cartels, and all those, which are very good points. I have to agree. The only thing I can tell you, of course, you did your research. The only thing I can tell, and I think this one goes to both the teams, I felt something like ad hominem coming from either side, attacking the person. In an argument, we attack the argument. We don't attack the person. So I heard it from this side, actually from the third speakers of either team, yeah? So let's avoid that. But you had a very good argument.
All right. And now for the results. St. Anne's Muthale Girls, the judges awarded you 65.7%. Let's give them a round of applause. And a 2% difference in this debate. Tala High School, the judges awarded you 67.7%, making you the winners of this debate. Congratulations to Tala High School, to St. Anne's Muthale Girls. To St. Anne's Muthale Girls, do remember it's not in whether you lose or you win, it's in how you play the game.
Thank you so much for staying tuned to our esteemed viewers and audience. Remember, the debate may be over, but the conversation still continues across our social media platforms with the hashtag GDC. For SDGs, we'd also like to appreciate each and every person who's been able to make this show a reality, from the principals to the patrons and the students of each and every participating school. I've been your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperancia Kapanga. See you in the next episode.